tell me your origin story. Why did you get onto this space?
Right.
Why did you start a company in this? Yeah.
There have been months, right? Like in the initial months, there have been months with zero movement on these platforms, like zero sales.
Question: do ad creators use AI to create ads and stuff?
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of building this? In this episode, we speak to Asmita, a young entrepreneur whose performance marketing agency helped many D2C brands make more than $150,000 in sales. We also bust the common myths around performance marketing and just what it takes for anybody to build and scale a performance marketing agency. All right. Hey, Asmita. Oh my God. I keep saying Asmi, and then I know how to say that.
I mean, you can call me Asmi as well. That's okay.
Okay. Hey, Asmi. Welcome to the Out of Office podcast. Super stoked to have you on the pod. We have a lot written today, but before we get into it, I'm going to start with one question, which is what is the biggest myth that companies have around growth marketing or performance marketing?
Right. So I think the biggest myth that I've personally seen after having worked in this industry for a while, because even before I had my agency, I used to work in corporate performance marketing. So I think the biggest myth is that the higher the budget you have, the quicker you grow through performance marketing.
Okay. So that's the myth. So which means that's not true.
Yeah. Like money can only get you a foot in the door. Of course, maybe the algorithms will push your creatives for a longer period of time, given the amount of capital you're putting in. But if your offer and if you're creative and if you're targeting, like these three things are like, the holy trinity of literally running performance marketing. If these three things are not in place, even if you spend, say, at least in India, we say that, someone spends 1 lakh or 2 lakhs in a month, it will not get you the door.
Okay. Wow. That's a very big myth, actually. Very interesting. We'll go into the levers, as you said, the Holy Trinity and stuff in a bit.
Yeah.
Because we've really got to break this down for people like me who has no clue about growth marketing other than being a consumer of it.
No, and that's why I'm really glad you brought this question up, because there's so many rumors out there about performance marketing in general. A lot of people also look at bigger companies, like more established companies in D2C, and they think that's the way to go when you're also a mid-scale business or you're a startup. But they have a completely different playbook, They're more established. They're making 10x, 100x revenue at the scale that they're in. So, there is no point in like comparing apples to oranges. I mean, you kind of have to just look at where you are.
Okay. Okay. So then, all right. Now you mentioned about companies, which is great. Tell us a little bit, maybe let's start with a simple definition. What is performance marketing, growth marketing? And I'm clubbing them together. I don't know if they are the same thing. So you got to tell me, but what is this? What is this entire area of knowledge?
Right.
And who are the kind of companies that will benefit the most from this kind of marketing channel?
Right. So performance marketing and growth marketing are in the same thing. So performance marketing is more very much focused on these platforms, as I said, like you're using either Amazon ads, Google ads, Meta ads, whereas growth marketing is somebody who helps you grow as a business. So it's kind of more of a business development role. So it's looking at everything starting from your customer journey to your actual Meta ad or Google ad campaigns to your sales funnels to everything, It's a more holistic view and a holistic approach towards growing. Now, in a nutshell, to simplify this, it's the entire journey your potential consumers have from the first click to the close. So it's the clicks to closing journey, which is performance marketing. Another important thing, Priyadarshini, that I do want to mention is that, of course, you have to be at a certain scale to be able to start with performance marketing. We were initially approaching small startups, but then we realized that they don't have enough capital to invest into performance marketing. So then I kind of made a thumb rule for myself, which kind of worked, that I would just do outreach to brands for at least 6 to 12 months in the market. They've seen a little bit of like profits or a little bit of revenue in general that they can reinvest back into performance marketing.
Okay. So then You said growth marketing is more holistic, and then you have
Yes.
performance marketing, which is click to close. When it comes to performance marketing, you spoke about a kind of stage of business or brand that works well with performance marketing, right? Which is brands that have been around for at least 6 to 12 months, maybe,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Why is that so? Apart from the capital, because capital is a myth, right? So, but apart from capital,
No, of course, of course.
yeah. So why this stage, and then even within this, like what kind of verticals? Yeah.
Sure, sure. So I think apart from the money thing, I think it's also to really understand the demand of your product in the market.
Mm.
I think to truly understand whether it's a product market fit, you need at least 6 to 12 months to actually sell, you know.
Right.
So
Yes.
initially, like I'll just share a quick funny story. Initially, we had
Yeah.
a client who was very excited to work with us. And of course, I was really excited to learn more too. And then I
Mm.
saw that they were talking to me and they were pitching in terms of the add to carts that they saw. There's this one metric on Meta
Okay.
which shows add to carts, which were which was
Okay.
blowing up for them. You know, it was like blowing up. It was like 100, 120 add to carts. Now
Mm.
that, like, I hated to rain on his parade, but that is the worst way to know whether, you know, you've actually, you are a product market fit or not, because that can show initial interest. But
Mm.
until and unless you see purchases happening, if your conversion
Yeah.
rate is not actually blowing up, you're essentially not a business yet. You know, you're not a product market fit.
So we've got the capital part, and we've got a strict metric of conversion, just so that we have product market fit.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of what industries would best work with this kind of a performance marketing channel?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can call it performance marketing as well.
Okay.
That's okay. That's okay. I think it really depends on your business objectives. So if you're heavily
Mm.
B2B, I think a better platform for you would be something like Google Ads,
Mm.
So when I was working in corporate marketing, as I mentioned, we were running Google SEO and, Google SEO ads
Mhm.
for a heavily constructions and manufacturing based company.
Okay.
Whereas
Okay.
when I pivoted into my direct to consumer brand and my direct to consumer agency, we realized
Yeah.
that Meta is a way better fit for it.
Okay. Okay.
So every business is open, like it's accessible to every business if they want to actually inherit that as one of their growth strategies. But
Yeah.
they need to be really clear on like who they're selling to, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
depending on that, choose the platforms. Like be smart with the channels you're using.
Okay. Okay. Give me some examples of, let's say, D2C companies that you worked with, or, are blowing up absolutely on these channels.
Right. So I think blowing up would be kind of like an overstatement, because whenever I speak about performance marketing and I speak about my
Yeah.
clients, I always try to
Okay.
maintain a more of a conservative outlook, because,
Okay.
it's something that is very tricky. Like one day you can be making like, you can get like 100 orders, and then the next day
Yeah.
that can be a little bit of a downfall. But yeah, I think a healthy ROAS, so I'll just share my screen to show
Sure.
you
Please go for it. Yeah.
one of these brands who we're done with. So, their
Yeah.
data is okay.
Yeah.
I asked for their
Okay.
consent and we can show the data.
Oh, wow.
So-
Okay.
I will just go ahead and share my screen. This was a Dutch organic spice brand. So, of course, as I lived
Okay.
in the Netherlands, so I did leverage a little bit of my network there for my agencies
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And as you can see over here, a 3.24 average ROAS, right, in 1 month.
Yeah.
If you can
Okay.
see, this is from May 1st to May 31st. So this is a really strong ROAS for a mid-scale brand who is putting in very little capital. If you can see, it's just 160 euros that they've put in, in a month.
For that month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, again, as you can see, there is 82 add to cards, which looks amazing in a month, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not what we get excited for. We get excited for what are the checkouts being initiated and what are the number of orders that are coming out given the ad set that's running. If you can see over here, there's so many ad sets, right? 36
Yeah.
campaigns were live, but only this one was actually going on in the month of May, given all the optimization around it. And we saw that this ad set was the best fit. So
Okay.
a 3.24 above a 3 ROAS is something that we called healthy, and something that we call is going in the right direction for a direct to consumer brand using Meta strictly. So this is only applicable to Meta. So yeah.
Okay. What's ROAS?
Yeah, ROAS is the return on ad spend. So you're putting in some money to, run your ads, and then what are you getting back on that?
Okay. So
Yeah.
so then does this platform know the value of the purchases and does it calculate based on that?
Yeah. So one thing it does is that it will tell you accurately everything that's coming through Meta strictly. So this
Okay.
does not account for any other channels that you're advertising on. Now, the
Mhm.
purchase value is obviously the revenue value. I couldn't really include in the screenshot, again, sensitive data, but the brand was okay with me showing the ROAS and the money put in
Yeah.
and everything. But yes, it will give you the revenue that you're making. So it'll show you the amount spent, what the purchase value is of the ads and, of
Okay.
your purchases. So yeah.
Okay. So then ROAS is basically computed. It's like the total value divided by the amount that you're putting in, and that gives you a multiple.
Exactly.
Something along that
Exactly.
line? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Okay.
Yes.
So 3.24, which means 3 times your ad spent, you are making
X
back.
your ad spend.
3x
Exactly.
your ad spend, you're
Exactly.
making back. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it makes
Yeah.
so much more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
cool.
then I would say
yeah.
if you're going above 5, then you're
Yeah.
excellent. Like you're gonna go, like
Okay.
you're gonna actually be profitable on Meta. Like this, I would say helps you get to break even for sure.
Yeah.
So you're not
Yeah.
gonna be burning money if you're making 3x. But if you're
Yeah.
making more than 5, then you're good to go. Like you're doing amazing.
Why would you say break even? But wouldn't break even just be that that I'm making back the dollar that I'm putting in exactly? So let's say I'm
Yeah, I
putting in
think this is a
$100 that I'm
bit.
making back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying break even because I'm trying to keep in mind that, it really depends on the kind of margins you have. So
Okay.
for a clothing business, usually the margins are very sensitive,
Okay. Okay.
You've got all these manufacturing costs and, all of these inventory holding costs and everything. Now, if you look at some other kind of a D2C business, what I have seen through my experience is like, for
Right.
example, skincare and beauty has like very
Yeah.
strong inventory, like they have more SKUs, they have more like inventory, they're constantly stocking the inventory as well. So for them to manufacture, especially in India, manufacturing costs are capped and they're pretty low. So it's just more cost effective and more easy for them to become profitable on Meta. But clothing is still, because it's so competitive even in a market like India, that manufacturing costs have also taken a hit.
Really?
And there's like added GST and everything over there. So I don't want to get into technicalities of running a retail business because that's not my forte. But yeah, I just spoke based on the conversations I've had with the owners.
Right. So a 3 would actually give them break even on their product. It's not just break even on the marketing spent.
Yes.
Okay. Which is good. Okay, what is the equivalent of this in, let's say, Google AdWords or Amazon, whichever you work with?
So I think Google Ads is something that I've had more experience with.
Yeah,
and I think for Google Ads, you also need, like, how I mentioned 6 to 12 months. That is strictly again for Meta. So Google Ads is that you actually need a proper budget. So when we were working at the company I was working, like when I was working at the company in Amsterdam, there was a 6-figure budget, like 6-figure in euros kind of a budget for it. So Google Ads, if you're nowhere near 10 to 15 in the starting in terms of your multiple, in terms of the money you're making back, you're not going to be heading in the direction of profitability or, getting your payback, basically.
Okay. So then what are the levers that go into these channels? And what can you tweak to optimize your return on ad spend?
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of people who are going to be watching this, they might have heard about targeting in social media advertising, right? Because that's what's usually talked about. But the key thing over here is your targeting is only going to work if two of your main levers are in place. So number one is your offer, always. So what is your value proposition to your audience, And when I talk about value proposition, it's not only how amazing your product is. Say your product is amazing, but you're selling it at a price point that makes no sense for India, and then you're putting a discount on it, which makes even more like no sense. Like it's, making it worse than what it is. So that's something you really need to sit down with internally in your team and really, understand that this is what's going to work the best. Obviously, if you're doing it for the first time, you're essentially just A/B testing and you're essentially just taking a bet.
Yeah.
But once you have enough data, we always say run it for 3 months. Initially, we were signing 3-month contracts because that's how much time it takes to really know for a D2C consumer brand. And then I would say definitely your ad creative, And what I mean by ad creative is not that you have to spend like lakhs and lakhs of money in a high production, agency and, have like someone who's working at Netflix shoot your ad. No.
Yeah.
But what you do need is obviously, even if you're making a static image, which is just a static graphic design ad, everything needs to be crystal clear to your users. Like they need to know what the call to action is. They need to know what they're getting directly. A lot of people talk about cashbacks and things like that too on these ads and everything. So being really transparent about that in your ad is what gets you and what helps you build that trust. So I think these two levers would be the main ones.
So the offer and the creative.
Yes.
Mainly. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
What was, just tying it back to the previous conversation on the Trinity that you mentioned, where does that come in here?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the offer, the creative, and then I also talked about the targeting, right? Like once you have these two things in place. So if I speak on Meta, right? Like when you're doing any kind of advertising on Meta for the first time, you have the option on Meta to use a lookalike audience, which basically means, say that you've not sold in the market yet. What is your ideal buyer persona? Like what is an ideal customer for you? Okay. So that's something that you need to know when you're building a business. You should know that this is the kind of demographic that's going to do the best for my product, So once you put in all those details on Meta really streamlines that for you. It creates a lookalike audience for you, right? And then it targets your ad to that specific lookalike audience. Say that goes really well. What happens after that is that it turns into your custom audience. So that's another term on Meta. So from the lookalike to custom, and then you just keep doing remarketing ads to your custom audience. And remarketing is very important. So I did want to highlight on this that basically the first or second time you're going to launch a campaign, you might not be able to acquire all your customers. So what is very important is like having constant remarketing ads in place, which basically goes back to people who initiated a checkout, for example, on your product, but did not actually purchase.
Okay. So that's the thing that you see, like, let's say you're talking about it somewhere on WhatsApp and then suddenly something comes back again on Instagram
because what Instagram is tracking is a lot of people ask me this question because they're like, Asmita, you understand social media so well. And they're like, okay, but I didn't like the post or I didn't comment on it. So why is it coming up? Like, how does it know, That's not how it works. The way it works is that when you see sponsored content, right? The number of minutes you're spending on it. Instagram is a highly, tech advanced and an amazing platform that way. It will literally track the number of minutes you've spent on even that, ad or even on an organic content. I think, Priyadi, you've seen it on your feed as well. When you see organic content, it comes back again to you, although you've not liked or anything. So that is the, behind the scenes of how the whole engine works on Meta and then on Facebook and all these platforms as well.
Okay. Great. You were saying that, you need to run it for about 3 months to understand. Do you run a set of ad campaigns and creatives, or what do you do in those 3 months usually to understand whether this is working for you?
Yeah. So of course, when I said 3 months, it's not usually like one campaign running for 3 months.
Okay.
We at least like the good starting point is at least 3 to 4 campaigns with different messagings, So I'll give you an example to simplify this. So there was a beverage product we were working with, right? So their value proposition was that how, so many customers, like in general, consumers go to restaurants. There are so many people who don't enjoy alcohol, but when they look at a certain kind of food and they're not someone who drinks alcohol, they prefer going for a cola, right? Or like a lemonade. So they were coming up with South Asian like recipes of like, these beverages, which can pair really well with food. And you don't have to go the unhealthy way. So you don't have to take the unhealthy route of like drinking colas all the time, Now, but that was not their only value proposition. They also wanted to be categorized as a mixer brand, so you can use their brand as a mixer for your alcoholic drinks too. So there were different messaging. So what you're essentially doing here is that you're sending out one campaign that's just focusing on what I first mentioned. that an alternative to alcohol. The second one is how you can use it as a mixer. The third one for them was more like, it was kind of like a botanical product, like a very organic product. So how can you advertise that as a good for you category?
Yeah.
So an organic,
Yeah.
healthy product, you know. So you're basically A/B testing, and you're testing 3 different messagings in the 3 months.
Okay. Right. So 3 different messaging, and that means 3 different offers, 3 different ad creatives, 3 different
Yes.
audiences,
Yes.
and more. Okay.
Yes,
Right. So
yes.
it's basically a whole series of tests that you're doing, and you're looking at the data, and then you're choosing what works. most.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
how
that's
to
why the 3
optimize.
months is usually known as the A/B test months. So
Okay.
that's what we call it. And then after the 3 months,
Yeah.
you kind of get the rhythm of how this works. And then you
Mm.
understand, as I mentioned, the custom audience.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
understand what creatives are doing really well. And then you just keep those ad sets live.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Awesome. So what is the most difficult part of, doing this whole thing that we just spoke about? And
Wow.
how can someone be good at it?
I think the most difficult part is definitely like real-time optimization, I would say. Like tracking the campaign and tracking each and every ad set, especially when you have multiple campaigns running, and being on top of your numbers, like being on top of all the KPIs takes a lot out of you. So a job of a senior paid ads manager is like literally one of the most difficult jobs, I think, that exist out there, because not only do you have to be on top of the numbers, but you have to be really quick with being able to optimize as well, so that you don't miss out on an opportunity. Every single day, so many D2C consumers and, so many D2C users are using Facebook, Instagram, and, they're getting exposed to so much content,
Yeah.
So it's ever changing, and speed and
Yes.
agility is what you need to be able to actually successfully deliver through performance marketing. So I think that is a tougher, and because that's interconnected to so many other things, right? Like you need the perfect ad creative. And so that takes some time because you need to let your design team know to come up with new ads that need to be posted. And then you've also got to go through approvals with the brand. So, all of these things take time. So what you need to do is act with a lot of speed, I would say.
Okay. And are there today tools that can actually help with the speed? I mean, of course, coming to AI, I have a big question. Do ad
Yes.
creators use AI to create ads and stuff? Yeah.
Yes, I think because of this AI boom, I've been seeing a lot of changes. And I just personally feel like, again, it can get you a foot in the door, but it's not it's not the most sustainable way to grow,
Okay.
Nowadays, there's so much artificial intelligence everywhere that I'm seeing that consumers, at least in India, I can speak for India only, what I see is that there is an AI fatigue,
Okay.
Like people are getting tired of seeing consumer brands using AI to create ads. What is working really well, some of the best D2C businesses in India are doing so well because it's like their founders are on ground shooting content, or it's like their consumers are shooting content. There's so much user-generated content,
Right.
Influencer marketing has blown up in India. So a lot of influencers are, being hired by these amazing brands. So people are really enjoying that more than seeing an AI ad right now, I would say.
Okay. Right. So and you're talking about ads in the sense like video content, largely, not.
Yeah, video content, and also I think static images. If you talk about, I think D2C consumer brands, you can use a high quality picture, maybe a photo shoot you did. For some of the F&B clients we had, we would always do photo shoots with them, because the food and the product needs focus for sure.
Yeah.
But if you talk about a skincare, a beauty, or a fashion brand, if you're using AI, firstly, if you're not paying for a highly, like a premium subscription on these different AI apps, it's going to generate the worst kind of ads for you. Like it's going to generate like really ugly looking ads. And that's just not going to convert. And people will know.
Right.
Like even if you're an amateur, like even my parents who are not tech savvy, like they look at an ad and they know it's AI if it's like badly produced. So, yeah.
Wow. So then that should be okay. I thought AI would help sort of reduce the time that would take to do the brand creatives, especially if it's static. I get it. Videos, they're still yet to.
I mean,
very far away from quality. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way I view the use of AI, because we've used AI as well, let's be real, in running this business. And I think what has really helped is definitely with the time that it earlier took for us to come up with ideas and to optimize quicker. So we put
Right.
in our ideas, then it kind of refines it for us, right? On these chat-based models. But
Right.
when it actually comes to design, right, you still need to, at least in marketing, this is like a whole debate out there right now with AI and marketing. But in marketing, you need the creativity. You need that creative touch, which in such a very, well advertised or whatever, like somebody who's done a lot of work in this field can bring about for you.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so what does it take for someone to be good at it? Doing all of this.
Oh, okay. That's a really good question. I think you just need to put blinders on. Like, I think there's just so much noise because it's such a, also a remote business. So you're all alone. I mean, a lot of performance marketing agencies are also on site. My one was completely remote. My team was like pan India. So I wasn't really meeting them all the time. And I think it's important to just put blinders on. And most importantly, whatever clients you have, like solving for them, like being open to like customize strategies for them. Like, don't just push what a competitor is doing. Do an analysis of what the competitor is doing. Don't push it on the client, is what I've seen. Once you start solving for them, you also understand what the pain points are. Like, I'll give you an example. The last brand that we worked with, right?
Yeah.
Also a sustainable fashion brand called Rebello. Their manufacturing is based out of Gujarat, but they ship pan India. Now, what I understood is that there was so many errors in their CRM. So their customer journey post a customer makes a purchase was a mess, So we came in and we really dropped helpful insights, all thanks to my senior paid ads manager, who was way older than me too, but he was very well experienced. And, he said that these are things that you need to fix because D2C is a cutthroat industry in India,
Right.
So if you are not on top of these things, if your customer is not getting a good experience from the time they made the purchase till the time they want to make an exchange, say that they didn't like the product, you're not going to be able to be successful. So yeah, I think it was really like diving deeper into their model and realizing that this is not working. I can make thousands of ads for you, but if this is the experience you're giving behind the scenes and this is how your inbound marketing looks, it's not going to work.
Okay.
So,
wow. So eventually, basically having that experience to know what is a good way to operate that specific business through, and also, I guess it's that experience. I don't know. So usually, what happens is that with AI today, you can do anything, you can build anything, you can build apps, you can build whatever. The whole point is that what is really good, what will really work. That is something that comes with experience, that baselines. And as you work and you have this experience, your baseline starts shifting. And what used to be really cool before is not anymore.
No, I'll be completely honest with you, like social media has made out this whole thing to be such a highlight reel, like building businesses and, being in performance marketing as well. And being in marketing, everyone thinks it's like, these influencers are going on paid holidays, so much fun. And, it's like the best thing ever. But if I actually have to come down to it, because I work in behind the scenes of this, there have been months, right? Like in the initial months, there have been months with zero movement on these platforms, like zero sales, zero traction. We don't know. We're just walking a path of uncertainty,
Right. Yeah.
But yes, over there, everything said and done, there needs to be a strategy, which is where the agencies come in the picture.
Yeah.
We've obviously worked with other brands. We build credibility. We understand strategy to a certain extent. Not only like just me, that's why you need to build a team, like a solid team that can help you do this.
Yeah.
The guy who I got very lucky with, we met on LinkedIn and, he became my senior paid ads manager. He had worked like globally as well. And, he told me that this is something that this is the thumb rule. This is what you go with. But there is no way in hell that this is going to work for every brand. So you go, you test. This is why we keep saying A/B test. You go test, you see, you gather data, and that is how you scale. So
Right. Yeah. Okay. So knowing what is good data, learning from that, and then eventually scale.
And honestly, being willing to like fail as well, and being willing to like look at like so much, like no movement on what the efforts that you're putting in for.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that is very important.
Wow. Okay, great. I mean, we've spoken so much about performance marketing. I think it's a very good introduction to people who don't know this, at least founders who
Yeah,
know where to get to and if they want to leverage this as a field. But let's talk about Forma Works. Tell me your origin story. Why did you get onto this space?
right.
Why did you start a company in this? Yeah.
Yeah, so Forma Work started because, I started noticing a gap in the market where these really established brands, as I mentioned, have an easy access to a performance marketing channel.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even outsource. If they outsource to an agency like Ogilvy, right? Like the world's biggest advertising agency. Or they have in-house expertise to do it. And then you have these small startups that are obviously aware that they cannot even do this, right? Like they don't have the money and they don't want to like take a bet with investor money unless it's obviously consented by their investors. But what I saw is that there was this middle segment, at least in India, who were really creating valuable products, like products that I would personally use as well as a consumer.
Yeah.
But because of the lack of expertise in the field of performance marketing, and because of so many rumors, right? Like there have been agencies that have ripped people off. There have been like bad experiences. There's a lot of stigma around agencies in India.
Oh, I had no clue. Okay.
Yeah, because of the past experiences people have had, and then there are also people who were growing well offline. They have a successful, profitable offline channel, so they're not very keen. Like it's like, okay, we can do it, but it's not a big deal for us.
Yeah.
So I think I did notice that there was a lot of potential. Like it was just brewing, like in the middle segment, they just needed the right direction, the right expertise, the right level of transparency, and then we could actually build something valuable for them.
Okay.
So that is where form came, like the word form. So form stands for any kind of branding, any kind of like brand building activity. So if you want to be known as a brand and if you want to be actually successful and build an identity through performance marketing, you need to have solid branding as well.
Of course.
Like when consumers land on your landing page, they need to feel like amazing about the product. And amazing about the company in general. And then function was obviously performance marketing. So where form meets function was like the tagline of Forma Works. So we wanted to create an ecosystem where we're looking at both creating a brand, but also making sure that there's actual money coming in and there's actual conversions happening. So yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. And then, so how long ago did you get into this business, and tell us about the time, when you cracked your first client?
So I started this in the beginning of 2024. So it's properly been like 2 years and a couple of months, I would say.
Okay.
But I myself have worked in marketing for like almost 5 years now. But yeah, I think the first client, it's actually a funny story. And I don't think I should I can't share it. I think it's been a while. But because I was so excited, when you get started, you're so excited, right? Like you want to close, you're like
so much
hyped.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm going to get this done today. So I remember there was this one skincare brand I had pitched to who was from Delhi. Okay, it was a Delhi-based brand. The guy was like, hey, like, why don't you go ping my team members? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I just need you on this discovery call.
Yeah.
And then I got ghosted, like no response. So no response from the founder, no response from the team. Then I was like, it's okay. It's very normal. I read on, other platforms, this is very normal. So then I kept following up, like almost every other alternate day. I was like, hey, let's just get on this call. It's just a no commitment, 15-minute discovery call. I got blocked as a result of that. So I just got blocked on WhatsApp. And then I was like, okay, this is also very normal, apparently. This happens. So I just went on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, let's not use WhatsApp. Maybe people are not appreciating that. So I went on LinkedIn. I got a hold of like one of their marketing interns, like not even someone who can make a decision. So I was like, trust me on this. I don't want to keep, bothering your team. Just put me in touch with your marketing person or your founder. This is just going to be a quick 15-minute call. So in a nutshell, why I shared the story is because I forced my first client to come on my discovery call, in a way. But I think the stars aligned on the first call because they were not really happy with the agency they were working with. They were also hesitant to talk to me because of that exact reason. But I kind of really let the client speak. So that's what I kept doing on discovery calls. I would only let the client speak more. Like the client should speak more than I speak, So I really listened. I really stayed in the moment. I really tried to understand their business model and what's going wrong. And that's when they were like, and I was like, you know what? Let's just do it for 3 months. I'm not even locking you in for more than that. And then I said the first month is going to be heavily probationary. So we really see how this is going. If you're not happy with the team, if you're not happy with how things are working, we don't do this anymore. And then he was like, I can take a bet on you because I like the terms you have. I like the transparency you have, you know. So yeah, that was the experience.
Wow, I need to go deeper into this now. Sorry, I have this habit of going deeper. So, okay, what was wrong with the previous agency? And I want you to approach this from a whole, what's wrong with the industry and agency, and why does it have such a bad rep? Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that they were doing incorrectly, or not incorrectly, but just like not putting enough time into, was the real-time optimization that I mentioned, right? So when I spoke to the client, they said, this agency keeps saying they'll send me monthly reports. And when I see the monthly reports, I see that there is more money being burned than money being made. Now that is the main mistake, you know. So monthly reports.
So their ROAS is like super low, or like
ROAS is super low, and I can't disclose numbers because that would be a bit too much and like, you know, shitting on that other agency. But just to keep it neutral, I would say they were like spending 25 to 30% more and like making barely like 5-10% of what they were spending, you know. So it was like proper losses, like proper burning money on Meta.
Okay, that's burning. You know? Yeah.
That was proper burning. Yeah. And, but his problem, like what I understood, the client's problem was not even like that the money was being burned. His problem was that there is zero oversight. Like there's zero transparency. They've outsourced it. When a consumer brand is outsourcing it to an agency, it's entirely on you to be heavily transparent, you know, to send out weekly updates, to send out daily updates if required, you know. If you're an agency who has a bigger team, I think that should be even easier for you. Like I didn't even have a big team, you know. I had a team initially of 10 people and then I cut that down, you know. But one thing I knew, whether it's 30 people, like whether it's 30 people in my team, 10 people, 5 people, this is a industry I've chosen to deliver services in where you need to have oversight and you need to be on top of the data, of the numbers, you know. So I think that was the main reason. Like there was so much lack of oversight that it led to Meta just exhausting the ad account and taking the money away, but there was no optimization happening, no, you know, correction of which ad set should be live and things like that.
Yeah. But in this industry, like, do you guys have like weekly calls and things like that? And are you telling me that's not enough?
Yeah. So I myself, like initially, I used to also be on these weekly calls because I used to try to make it as hands-on as possible. But once you scale and things, of course, you can hire more people and, you know, they kind of take it forward. So I just had the senior paid ads manager kind of leading that with the designer and with the client and their team. But yes, I would always also recommend evaluation meetings end of every month. So that evaluation meeting was just with the, say, CEO, founder, CMO, whatever, and me. And that would strictly just actually be about what we've done and what was my team doing and what were the metrics being looked at and what do they feel about the working relationship and about the services. So yeah, we do weekly calls. But I think more of the communication, like the quick communication happened via Slack.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. So, you know, what happened to the end of that story? So you got the 3-month contract and then was that
so 3 months.
You guys like continue? What's the plan?
We did continue. Okay. So this was back in 2024. It was like my first client, right? So that was when I started. So the first 3 months, of course, I didn't have any money to like actually hire people. So fun story. I'm the one who ran the campaigns for the client. And I was the one creating the creatives because thankfully I'd worked in graphic design. So I kind of, you know, I was like multi-dimensionally skilled, thankfully, in marketing. I was like, let's do it myself. And then genuinely, I understood that I wasn't the best at design, for example. Like I'm aware of that too. So that's when I took a call to, you know, onboard a design intern in India, you know. And there's a lot of potential for that in India. All these kids are in like design schools and they want to do internships with you. They're very willing to work and, you know, things like that, even if it's unpaid. So I got lucky finding this one guy from Chennai who was basically a graphic designer. And I onboarded him and then he started actually creating the creatives and things like that, which turned out to be amazing for me because I could renew for another 3 months with the client.
Awesome. So, yeah, so then tell us a little bit about your journey. So you started, you got that client, you had an initial offering.
Yes.
Did that initial offering change as your business grew? And what did you learn about this? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when in 2024 we started, like I was very focused on performance marketing. I thought
Yeah.
I know how that works. I worked at a Fortune 500 and that's it. So I was
Mm,
really close minded when I started.
mm,
So I think the biggest learning was do not be close minded. And I had to tweak my offering to be able to scale. So we
mhm,
started looking at add-ons, so integrating
mhm,
add-ons into performance marketing. The first offering was that we just run your meta ads for you. We run your end-to-end campaigns just over there. You figure out content, you figure out everything else, right?
mm,
Then I realized that this is going to be a win-win because of course we're going to make money if we do add-ons, but we're also going to
mm.
get to know what design element and what brand and identity and things like that work well for the brand if we do it hands on. So
Mm.
we shifted towards a model where we did creative add-ons. So everything starting from shooting your content, if you need that, to creating graphic images, to
Yeah.
everything. Then we also started another vertical, which was, my idea to integrate inbound marketing as well, like inbound marketing assistance. So we, for, a couple of rupees, you can basically get oversight into your CRM as well. We can help you with CRM. So yeah, I integrated those two things. So the way it worked, because we were doing value-based pricing. So just to make that clear, like it was very dependent on deliverables and KPIs and how many deliverables are going, how many ad sets are going.
Mm.
So that was a flat fee being paid to the agency. But along with that, the add-ons were basically the non-negotiables. So that was the thing that we couldn't negotiate on. We would just add that if they opted for
Yeah.
it.
Okay. 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 So then what would you say was FormaWorks' unique differentiator? How would you differ from so many different agencies out there?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think when you partner up with agencies,
Hmm.
again, I'm speaking based on what conversations I've had and the experiences I've had. And I would say when you say you're a partner and you're a trusted partner,
Mm.
you can't say that and then also just be focused on running ads. That's not
Mm.
how it works. So when I say FormaWorks will be your trusted partner in helping you
Mm.
grow through this channel, I need to do a deep dive into your business model. I need to be
Mm.
on top of what your business model is. So not only how you're going to make money through ads, but how are you acquiring customers? What is your other customer acquisition strategies? What is your consumer behavior? What is your very important for fellow people who are also interested to build businesses here? Please
Yeah.
track your lifetime value.
Right. What is
LTV,
that?
lifetime value is the amount of people you're retaining. Like, what is your customer
Mm.
retention like? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I can get 2-3 clients in a day and I can be like, okay, I am the D2C king.
Okay.
But until and unless you are sustainably being able to get those 3 to
Okay.
100 to 1,000 orders a day,
Yeah.
you're not a D2C brand
Right.
who's gonna like succeed. So track your
Okay.
LTV. So that is something that obviously Meta advertisers cannot do for you. You need
Mm.
to be on top of your e-commerce and you have to be on top of all your other channels.
Mm.
So that was something that I would say we also started assisting with.
But
Yeah.
then how did you maintain this? How did you maintain bespokeness and able to scale this? Did you show that up on your price tag or how? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest challenges, definitely, because when it comes to, looking at your profitability as well, because essentially I'm running a business too. I need to look at how I am also winning over here, right? So I think the first thing is always like being very transparent on the contracts.
Mm.
So the first point. Now the pricing. So you have to be really like transparent on that, right? Like now, if I wanted to go to market with like pricing my advertising services as a particular package and
Mm.
then adding everything into it, like be it, the inbound marketing, be it sales, with everything that I just mentioned on the side,
Yeah.
that will cost the other consumer on the end, like consumer brand on the end, a fortune.
Mm.
So
Mm.
what I started doing, I was willing to do that. Now, a lot of people won't be okay with it. But I have to be
Mm.
honest about this. I was more concerned with credibility. I was more concerned about more companies on my portfolio in terms of building the agency. I was okay to make a little bit of a compromise over there. So the add-ons that we were proposing, they were very reasonably priced.
Okay.
So say an average, a big agency is probably at least charging you a 50,000 or a 60,000 for all these other add-ons that I mentioned. We were doing it at a little like discounted price, I would
Right.
say. So we would give it to you at 20K, 30K. So not heavily discounted because we need a lot of resources. We need a lot of time that's going to go into this.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
very capped. Like I wasn't going to overcharge them or, charge them beyond the market rate, and know my place in the market too. Like I can't compare myself to, a really big agency in Gurgaon, for example. I have to look at myself too and the value that I can add. So yeah.
Right. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about, since we're talking so much about formal works and we understood the pricing and where you've beautifully mentioned how you placed and positioned yourself in the market, right? How have you changed all this while, in this whole, this is what I find most fascinating in most entrepreneurs is working on the business. How do they do this? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think this is like a running joke that I make with some of my friends that the quickest way to grow is to start building a business, Entrepreneurship is the biggest growth hack that exists out there.
I agree.
So personally, I think my personal development, my life, my mindset, everything took a 360-degree turn ever since I got into this field of entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It's been tough. It's been more days of seeing no movement, seeing a lot of rejection, seeing a lot of failure. But I think, it gives you a kick as well. A lot of people will say it in a way where they might just feel like you're victimizing yourself. I just viewed it in a way where it was a privilege. Like it was a privilege for me to even be rejected, even get a foot in the door to go speak to a client,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it changed me. It made me very disciplined. First and foremost thing, it really made me very aware of how my time should be used and where to channel that time, what to focus on. And second, I think it made me very okay with moving despite uncertainty and taking action,
Okay. Today, where are you guys? And, over the last 2.5 years, how many clients have you worked with? What would you talk about your growth? What numbers would you give yourself? Yeah.
So I think in India, in terms of revenue, we were pretty profitable. So I can actually share some revenue numbers too. We were making around 7 to 10 lakhs in profit.
Nice.
Sorry, in revenue, not in profit, in revenue. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
And I think, I could invest a lot more in platforms, in softwares that we use because my team structure was very lean. My team structure was very much remote and very working on their own and knowing how to use software. So no trainings or none of that. And I think, another thing that I do want to say here as a disclaimer is that when you start a business, any kind of business, because there's so much noise right now with entrepreneurship, it's really important to know what you're setting out to do. And what I was setting out to do is what I did end up doing. So not everyone's, which was literally being able to cater to the middle segment that exists there, being able to solve for their unique problems, not solve for $1 billion market, but just solve for this person. Because that's how you become quite successful in whatever you're doing, at least in performance marketing. And I think, my idea also, I was like a by chance entrepreneur. I went to a incubator networking thing, and that's when it all started for me. That's like another fun story. I can share it later. But I think because my agenda in life was not always to be an entrepreneur, I kind of just became one, and then I fell in love with it. I think it's very clear to me now that you need to be very, very honest to yourself. Even if you're growing slowly, you need to be okay with that as long as you know you're growing and as long as you know you're putting in the action required to grow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we're at that stage. We worked. You asked me a question about how many businesses we worked with.
Yeah.
So again, in a month, because I said my team is quite lean, right? Like I didn't have a 30-person team or something. So I would take a max of 8 retainers. So 8 quality retainers that we can work with. Some of the months it was a little slow because, we would have to wait for client approval. So the active work was around 5 retainers in a month, I would say. And we had, as I mentioned, we had value-based pricing. So depending on how many deliverables they need from us, how many campaigns, what ROAS they're looking at, we, gave them the best fit package for that. So that's how it worked. Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of building this?
If I have to talk about
Yeah.
building the business, initially I thought it was definitely closing. So closing was
Yeah.
something that I was struggling with initially.
Mm.
Obviously, because I don't come from like an entrepreneurial background. I was a first-time entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I was new in the Indian market as well. I hadn't really worked in India fully back
Mm.
then for people to know. And I entered the market kind of late too. Like there were already a
Mm.
lot of established agencies doing amazing work. So I think closing was quite challenging. And then once we started closing, I think like at least I saw was like difficult was being able to retain.
Mm. Mm.
How do I run that business model? Because the main metric that I track to see whether my
Mm.
business model is working is whether these
Mm.
retainers are happening, whether these
Yeah.
renewals are going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I didn't have customer retention, I essentially didn't have a business,
Mm. Mm.
So, because you need long-term commitment for performance marketing services.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that was what was the hardest part of building the business. And then the last one, something more personal, was just like doing it alone, I think.
Right. Right.
Obviously, initially had a co-founder, but that's okay. You're not always aligned, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even when the person was there, it was mainly me doing the work, which was also
Mm.
okay. And then, and then the person stepped back and I completely turned it into my IP. So it
Mm.
took a lot out of me as a person in her early 20s, navigating this market. Where also another thing, people don't take you seriously. Like just
Yeah.
because you're young, a lot of people I've walked into some WeWork offices and some offices in Mumbai, and they've told me on my face that, why should we trust you?
Yeah.
You're barely anything. You're barely in the market right now. Why do you
Mm.
think I'm going to go take a bet on you and not go invest in a 14-year-long agency?
Mm. Difficult
So you have to
questions.
be okay. You have to have a thick skin. Because I've
Yeah.
walked in, I've waited for ages to just get a meeting, in an in-person meeting, because some people don't want to do Zoom meetings when you're living in the same city for some reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's okay. You kind of listen to the client when you want to close. So I went
Yeah.
all the way to the office, and then that's what I get to hear, that, why should we listen to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's on you. I think what I did is that I was like, okay, you don't have to completely trust me. Just hear me out for 30 minutes. And if
Mm.
that works for you, then, that would be amazing. And I think just don't take it personally. That's what I would say,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. True. I know this loneliness can get quite a bit,
Yeah.
but what was your way of not feeling lonely? What did you do? And what should others do?
Yeah, I think find your community, definitely.
Okay.
Community is the most important when you're an entrepreneur.
Okay.
What I did personally was that I didn't really join like exclusive entrepreneurship clubs because that's still
Yeah.
kind of picking up in India. It's still relatively
Okay.
new. But yeah, places like, there are a lot of spots. For example, WeWork is like an amazing spot for you to meet
Mm.
people after you're done working on your business.
Okay.
Then there are other places. If you have a little bit of more resources, like financially, a Soho
Mm.
House, for example, was amazing, at
Mm.
least for me, because I got to
Mm.
meet like co-advertising agency owners. I got to meet like a lot of people wanting to get into this market, which was
Yeah.
also interesting.
Yeah.
Then I think personal life-wise, fitness became like a
Mm.
really strong anchor for me. And it
Mm.
wasn't only to feel better like physically, but very mental for me. And then through that fitness environment, I met so many other entrepreneurs. So that was again meeting people. So there's always spaces. You don't have to exclusively look. Because when I moved to Mumbai after
Yeah.
coming back from
Yeah.
Amsterdam, I
Yeah.
went on LinkedIn and I was just looking up like entrepreneur clubs,
Yeah.
entrepreneur meetups. And then I was told by a very close friend in Mumbai that, because he's an entrepreneur too, he said that's not how it works here. Like it's still picking
Okay.
up slightly. There are events, there are clubs that are being built, but you kind of just have to put yourself in environments where,
Mm.
you're going to meet people. You just have to be okay. You have to be
Mm.
open. And
Yeah.
that's how you build a community. And I think I got really lucky that way. I found amazing people.
Yeah.
Mumbai really showed me the hard side of actually building businesses because it's usually
Yeah.
known for Bollywood and known for all the glam and the glitz and everything. But that's just not real Bombay. It is really a different side if you're building a business and if you're trying to make it big.
Do you
Yeah.
believe that we're living in a simulation and that our energy and thoughts actually create the reality or the simulation that we are in?
That's such an interesting question. I think your thoughts and energy definitely influence your behavior.
Mm.
I wouldn't say they automatically create your reality. The only thing that will create your reality is action. an
Okay.
action in the
Okay.
right direction. It's a strategic
Right.
action is what I'd say.
Okay.
We're all aware the times we're in. We're all aware how the world is like right now. So if you are sitting in today's day and age with no like strategy and no like strategic actions, then
Yeah.
you're up for a lot of trouble. Like it's
Yeah.
scary, but it's not as simple as our parents' generations, saw it.
Mm.
And we're all aware of that. We have to address that.
Mm.
So yeah, I think if you put in enough actions, it's not only about putting actions. I would also say it's about putting enough actions, enough volume of the right actions, because I've seen that firsthand change my
That
trajectory.
compounds.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
compounds. Like I've seen how that has changed my life and it's changed my trajectory, be it personally or professionally. I think just stay at it. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. But if you're willing to put enough actions, you can change things around. You can turn things around,
Great. Well, thanks for that. I think I'm down to my last few questions. Actually, two
Sure.
questions, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if someone was, thinking about starting their business in performance marketing, what would you advise them?
Wow, what a good question. I think if someone's wanting to get started in performance marketing, the first thing is don't make your first agenda or your first to-do list to turn this into a company and an agency.
Mm.
Enroll yourself as a sole proprietor. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Because it was just more efficient, obviously money-wise, but in general.
Yeah.
Do that. Try
Yeah.
to find at least one client. You're going to find at least one client. That is for sure. Yeah. And try to solve for them. Just try to focus on what problem you can solve for that person. Once you do that, and once you do that consistently, you keep solving for them, that is where it compounds. So start in the space being like, okay, I want to go have a direct impact on these businesses. I want to help them scale. I want to help them go to market. I want to help them reach their correct target audience. Do that. Make a list of companies you want to reach out to. Say out of that list, 2 people get back to you. Try to work for them, Be okay. Again, another thing I've seen a lot around me is that, oh my God, but they're asking me for like 20K. How can I do this at 20K? No one's asking you to do this at 20K forever, But if you're new, because I was raw and new, I had no backing, no nothing, you have to be okay with that. That's going to cost you a little bit of like your mental health probably because, they're paying you less. So they might just kind of try to overstep.
Yeah.
Learn how to communicate, learn how to set boundaries, but also don't fixate on the money right then and there because you've not proven your credibility yet.
Right. Yeah.
Do 2 campaigns for them at 20K, prove your worth, prove your credibility, then do an upsell. That's literally how I started growing. So from that 20K can be converted to a 50K. That 50K can go to a lakh to 2 lakhs. So that is the, game of like upselling, which a lot of people in business know, right? So be willing, because I came back from abroad and I was like, okay, I have to work for this much. Like this is the first quotation I'm getting. I was like, taken aback because obviously when you earn in euros or earn in USD and things, it's like a completely different world. But I was like, hey, this is not me working for somebody else. This is me building my credibility. So if you can become okay with that and be okay with the long-term vision, you're going to do well.
Nice. Okay. So start small and then use upsells and stuff.
Yeah, because, and if your sole like reason is to pay your bills, which is completely understandable, or if your sole thing is that you want quick money, you want to make more money, don't get into this. Like, don't get into entrepreneurship. At least don't get into performance marketing entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Go become a freelancer, go on Upwork, go on Fiverr, do your work there, or go work for a multinational company. Because, and if you don't have resources, if you don't have a fallback, definitely don't get into this. That's also something I would say, some kind of backing. Now, obviously, not only like I didn't have the complete support financially from my family in Mumbai, but at least I had worked abroad, So I did have some kind of fallback financially, which is very important and not talked about, But again, that's not something I can entirely rely on. You have to start building your active income. So I was okay with the lower quote because I was like, I have not proven myself yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
And roughly, let's say, if someone is getting into the how many months or years would you say of savings for the expenses should the person have to give a comfortable enough backing? so that they can just purely work on work and not think about paying bills. Yeah.
Right. So I think if you're in India, if you're relocating back to India, you do have an advantage because the living costs and expenses are cheaper. So for my case, I think at least what I saw was a year of savings because Mumbai is expensive. Like now India is cheap, but Mumbai is a beast on its own in India. It's not the cheapest. If you want to live near relevant areas, if you want to, be near relevant people to grow as a business, you need money. You need money to pay your rent. You need money to pay other utilities and everything that you need to just survive there. So I would say at least a year of savings in any other currency or INR is what is needed.
Okay. Wow. Great. A lot of people have told me about this year. So I asked this question to a lot of entrepreneurs, and everybody has said a year is okay to get started. But I met one who was like, definitely 3 years. Like if there is a number where you want to like absolutely succeed and you're not turning back to a job ever, then 3 years. And I think that is more relevant for a non-service based company.
So I was just going to say that's probably a product based company.
Product-based company,
Service-based businesses is pretty like, cost effective to get started with. Like something like marketing services. If you're like an expert in it, you've done a little bit of marketing somewhere, you can get started. You don't need any capital. You don't need any like personal money to put in. But to survive as a human being and like to live every day, of course you need money for that. So,
correct. So that 1 year. Okay, nice. And today, if you had $1,000, what would you start next?
Oh, that's so amazing. Wow. What an interesting question. I think for $1,000, if I have to talk about like a similar field, I would definitely still do an agency route because you have high margins. If you make money, you can make good money and you'll get your payback, like whatever you've invested, even your time and energy. Within a year's time, you will make it back, if you're doing it the right way. So I think definitely like what I mentioned earlier in our conversation about that deep dive into the business model. Now I understand when I say that agencies don't have much time to do that, right? Like they say we'll only do your ads. So maybe integrating artificial intelligence into this where there's a proper tech model. I'm not talking about Meta AI because Meta AI is not 100% accurate. If you're relying on that, you're making a really big mistake. So Meta AI only optimizes your ad copies and your ad targeting and bidding. Okay. But what I mean is that when you approach a client, right? And if I want to say, I want to be your growth partner, I want to be your growth partner that you can trust. Now, and then I can pitch them this product, this AI tech product that I've built and look at the accuracy. It needs to be trained really well. It already does that pre-wetting. It already does that pre-deep dive, to understand what gaps, because a lot of times when you go on these discovery calls and you ask the client, are you aware, have you heard any feedback about what the gaps are in your model or in your services? Most of the times they don't know. They say, some client said this was a bad quality product, but it's very vague, you're not going to get clarity on that. So it helps the agency as well because there's this tech product that's monitoring that for you. And then on the other hand, there's also the customer, like the consumer brands, who will also know, okay, these are the things I need to work on. So something like that. And with $1,000, I'm pretty sure you can get like a CTO on board and kind of get started on that journey. So
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So like an AI based growth partner that understands where your business is, what needs to happen, and gives. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's very
something of that sort.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm already thinking of solutions, so I have this habit.
Because you're the expert with AI, so.
I mean, you can use.
We need people like that. Exactly. But the thing with the chat-based project. The thing with the chat-based models or like, all of these things is that I do feel like there is a little bit of problem of accuracy, I feel like it isn't very unique to each product. Like I'll put a retail product or I'll put a skincare product. It is trained on the mass market, So maybe another niche to what I just mentioned is like something that's built for like today's market, something that's built for like the Indian market, maybe something specific to the geography,
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah. Thanks, Asmi. A lovely conversation so far. We heard so much about everything that you built and this last bit on AI and how that can help it is super cool. Any last things for our audience that you want to say before we switch off? Yeah.
No, I would firstly just say I had an amazing time and the questions were like so insightful because usually I just get asked questions just on performance marketing, but not behind the scenes, something that I mentioned to you as well. And I think to the audience, if anyone's interested to start a business, as I mentioned, obviously I gave you technical advice, but I would just say, just have your mind in the right place in the sense, like just be open, Now, don't wait to like just feel ready. If it's really calling you, if you feel like this is what you want to do, there's no way there's going to be a perfect moment for you to start.
Yeah.
So just get started. You're going to start, you're going to suck, you're going to figure it out, and you're going to get better,
Yeah.
So just don't close yourself off to that because I've seen myself do that when I initially started. I thought this is the end. But then my own experience taught me that that was not the end, So, yeah.
Wow. So just get started, everybody. All right. Thank you so much, Asmita.
Thank you.